So how's it going, everyone? Tim Blacktooth here. Welcome to this video where I'm going to analyse the final faction for the closed beta, which is the monsters. So I can't wait to get on to actually building decks and looking at the weaknesses, strengths, more particularly the weaknesses, how to beat certain decks, and that really interests me. But first we need to see what kind of cards the monsters have and to see if there's any glaring weaknesses that we can see. So first off, let's start with a recap of what particular leader cards they've got access to. We've got Dagon, create and play one of the following: Biting Frost, Impenetrable Fog, or Torrential Rain. So I think it might have been changed to be a bit of a nerf, so it used to be able to play Clear Weather, I believe. So you've no longer got that option, so you're basically going to pick Dagon if you're building a weather deck. In my opinion, you might choose him if you're like on the verge of a weather deck, or if you're built around one particular lane, like say all on range, for example. But I think if you see Dagon, then you're going to have to assume they're going to be playing a heavy weather deck. So that's a bit of a nerf on the clear weather side, but also on predictability. So next we've got Eredin, which is his ability is to create and play Eredin. He creates himself. So he's only 10 strength now. So he's actually been reduced from 15 quite a bit. Now I don't know whether this means that monsters can still carry over golden cards. By reducing overall the golden card strength, like Geralt went down to 12 and this guy is now 10, it might be more fair that you could bring over a 10 strength golden. There are a lot of ways to wound golden cards now. Not a lot, but you can also strip golden. So golden cards weren't as, insurmountable as they used to be. Being 10 strength makes him, reasonable now. It's the same as Radovid, who can destroy a 10, so he could destroy Eredin immediately if you trade leader for leader card. But yeah, basically it all comes down to, in my opinion, whether monsters can bring over golden cards now. So our final leader card is Gale's. Choose a row on your side of the battlefield and set the value of all non-gold units on it to 6. So it's very much going to be used in a monster swarm deck. You can probably assume they're going to go for that when you see this leader card being played against you. So you want things like your Neckers and your Arrakis, and you place them, and then you play Monster Nest, which duplicates them. They're all relatively low strength, 2 and 3, and then you play him and he sets them all to 6. So you can get some really nice benefit from that. We've seen some evidence in an event at Warsaw where a weather was played, and then someone played, I think it was a Hawker Healer, into the weather, and that got reduced to 1 if it wasn't already 1. But it buffed the rest, and they stayed there. They didn't go back down to 1. So we might be able to see that if you play like your Arrakas into weather, that you can still buff them all up to 6 and they'll be fine, unless someone reapplies the weather. So you could possibly still use this in a weather deck, which is a little bit more unpredictable, which is nice. So yeah, interesting card. I like it. It's going to be about placing loads and loads of really small numbers, which there are many ways to do. Our first card, which would work really well with that leader card, is the Foglet. 1 strength bronze card, goes on the range row, has what we used to call the weatherbound ability. Whenever a fog appears on the battlefield, play this unit from the deck or graveyard and add 1 strength to it. If fog is removed, this unit is removed as well. So it comes onto the board for free, so you definitely don't want them in your hand. But if you do, it's still not losing your card advantage. It's just losing you decent strength when you play it. It's losing you the opportunity to play something else, basically. But yeah, so this is going to be used with a weather deck. So the first card that would work really well with the previous leader card is the Foglet, which is a 1 strength bronze card on the range row. They used to have what we called the weatherbound effect. Whenever fog appears on the battlefield, play this unit from your deck or graveyard and add 1 strength to it. If fog is removed, destroy this unit. So it basically gets played for free as well. So whenever a fog is played, it will come from your deck or your graveyard for free, and then when it gets removed, it'll go into the graveyard, but they can come back out later if another fog is played. So it's reasonably good in that way. You obviously don't want these in your hand in any way, because obviously they're not going to get played for free, and it's a card slot which could be used for something else. If you get stuck with one of these in your hand, it's not the end of the world, because you're not losing card advantage like you used to. They've changed that now, but it's something which you could have played from somewhere else. So try and make sure you get these out early before you start drawing cards at the end of round 1, for example. So these will be really good because you use that leader card to set them to 6 strength, and that's really quite decent. Now, It'd be interesting to know whether Gale's leader card actually sets original strength or not. If it doesn't, that means when these guys go to the graveyard and come back out, they'll be back to 2 strength. But if it's original strength, they'll come back at 6, which is crazy, or maybe 7 actually, which would be absolutely crazy. So we'll have to see about his leader card. I imagine it's not original strength because it doesn't say, and that will be very powerful. So we've got the Arrakis, which is the most common thing that springs to mind for that leader card, Gale's. 2 strength bronze, goes on the range row. Play all copies of this unit from your deck. When Monster Nest is played, create and play a copy of this unit. So you've got 3 of them on the board instantly. And then you play Monster Nest and you've got another 3, so you've got 6. And presumably you go up to 12, unless it specifically doesn't copy the copies, if you know what I mean. So it could go to 3, to 6, to 12, to 24, or it could just go 3, to 6, to 9, to 12, if it only copies the originals. Which there was a previous ability, I think it was the Horde ability, which actually specified that it only copied the originals. So just be careful, it may not go up to 24, but it's still quite a lot having 12. And they're all 2 strength, which is meh. But then obviously Gale's will set all their strength to 6, which is insanely good. But obviously all very, very much scorchable. Or before you manage to get Gale's to set them to 6, they might be lacerated because they're only 2 strength. So I imagine it is difficult to do this particular combo. We've got the Neckers, which has 3 strength bronze cards and goes on the melee row. The same sort of deal. They muster all 3 out when you play one, and the Monster Nest will duplicate them. But they're 3 strength, so a bit harder to get rid of, which is nice. And if you've got the Neckers on the board and the Arrakis, the Monster Nest will do the whole lot, I think. So, you know, really, really good. Gale's can only actually specify 1 row, however, but so it's better to do the Arrakis row, but these are probably better, more likely to survive a lacerate and stuff like that. So we've got some more cards which are really good with the Gale's leader card. Things that create loads and loads of small units which he can set their strength to 6 later. So we've got the Fire Elemental, 5 strength silver card, goes on the range row, which is exactly the same row as your Arrakis, so a nice bit of synergy there. At the start of your turn, create and play a lesser Fire Elemental. So this is most likely 1 or 2 strength. I actually hope it will be 1 strength, because then it will protect the Arrakis from Epidemic, but we're not entirely sure. But it's at the start of your turn every time. It'll create 1 every time, which is really good. If you're having a really long round, he's just going to be filling the board with loads of rubbish things, but your leader card will hopefully set them to 6 later. So pretty decent in that respect. We've got Gaunter Odin, which is monsters only now. 5 strength silver, goes on the siege row. Create and play 3 shadows. Now, it used to be, I think it was 2 shadows on the melee and 1 on the ranged, and he himself was siege. We're not sure where the shadows go now because things have changed, but again, a lot of small units which I think probably will be about 1 or 2 strength again that you could buff up with the leader card. We've got the Golem. 5 strength bronze card, goes on the range row, monsters only now. When destroyed, create and play 2 lesser golems. So it's got basically the Death Wish ability. When it goes to the graveyard, it will create some lesser golems. You could maybe decoy it up. It's not worth it in my opinion, but that will create the lesser golems as well. Any wounding that would destroy it creates lesser golems, which are about 1 or 2 strength that the leader card can buff up as well. But we've got some other synergies with that. It's not just a very one-track thing to do with the swarm archetype. There are other aspects to it. So the first one is the Necker Warrior. 4 strength bronze card, goes on the ranged row. Choose a bronze unit on your side of the battlefield, create 2 copies of it and add them to your deck. So this works really well for musters, but it's not absolutely amazing because if you play, say, your Neckers, then they're all going to go onto the board from your deck, okay? And then you copy them with the Necker Warrior. It creates 2 copies and adds them to your deck, but now you've got no way to play your Neckers because, you know, you've got no more left. Maybe the Monster Nest would create some and muster the other ones out. That's one possibility. You could decoy one and then play it again to get all the others out of the deck onto the board. Another possibility. If you had a duplicate Necker, they only actually muster from the deck now. So you could place one down and the other one would come out, get the Necker Warrior to duplicate it, and maybe another one to duplicate it, so you've got loads in the deck. And then your second one that you had duplicate would actually be very useful to pull all the others out of your deck. So If you had duplicates and Neca Warriors, it would actually work quite well. But I think there's a card which I really, really like the ability, which is a lot easier to use, that the Neca Warrior could really utilize very well. And that was the Foglet we went over previously. Anything which is, I'm going to call weather-bound, where it only comes out when certain weathers are played, and gets removed when the weathers are gone. So this is on the range row, so it really utilizes the Fog weather card. And the good thing is the Neca Warrior is melee, so it won't get affected by that. But you can still copy the Foglet. Okay, so you place a fog down, and the Foglets come out. The Neca Warriors copy all the Foglets, so you've got loads and loads of them on the board. And basically they'll get destroyed and come back on. And basically there's so many of them, it doesn't matter if they get wounded, you know, because next time a fog is played, they come back out anyway. So it's really, really, really decent. And again, if Gale's leader card does original strength, these are going to be a powerhouse completely, because you'll have not just 3, but this will create them up to possibly 5, possibly 7, possibly 9, things like that. So you can start getting tons and tons of Foglets and use Gales to set all their strength to 6. So nice combo there. We have to see whether it's original strength, but it's definitely a really easy way to use the Neca Warriors without having to worry about all this decoy, which is probably not worth it, without having to worry about duplicates, which is probably not worth it. We'll have to see if the Monster Nest actually activates their muster ability, because then it's really easy to get these guys out after the Neca Warrior has done his business. Another aspect of the Monster Swarm decks is the Grave Hag, a 1 strength silver card that goes on the range row as well, so be careful not to stick her into a fog, because that's just silly. Okay, you probably can't use the Foglets and the Arrakis in the same sort of area unless Gales goes through weather effects, but I wouldn't risk it if I were you. Grave Hag, which is 1 strength, remove all non-gold units in your graveyard from the game and add 1 strength to this unit for each. Okay, the next aspect of the Monster Swarm deck is the Grave Hag, 1 strength silver card that goes on the range row. So try not to play her into a fog. You know, you might not be able to play the Foglets and the Grave Hag in the same particular deck. You might not be able to play the Arrakis and the Foglets in the same particular deck. Now, I did mention with the Arrakis that if you play them into a weather and they get reduced down to 1 and then Gale sets them to 6, we've got evidence that you can place something into a weather and then buff it, and its buff will do that. The weather isn't repeatedly activating, if you know what I mean. So you might be able to put these guys into a weather and then buff them to 6 using Gales, and they'll stay there. And maybe, I wouldn't necessarily suggest it, but you might be able to play the Grave Hag into a weather, providing it's the last fog that's ever going to get played, and then, you know, she'll consume things from the graveyard and go up and stay there, even though there's a weather on the board. But if another one gets reapplied, she's going to go down. So it's dangerous, but it might be something we can do. We have to test in closed beta and see if it actually works. But anyway, 1 strength silver. Remove all non-gold units in your graveyard from the game and add 1 strength to this unit for each. So she starts at 1, which is really bad. The average graveyard is about maybe 10 non-gold units, so she might go up to about 11, which is about average for a silver card. However, you're playing the Monster Swarm deck. Your graveyard is not an average graveyard. You've got plenty of cards you can put in there. So the Arrakis, that's 3. The Neca, which is 3. If you've got those on the board and you've used Monster Nest, that's, you know, 6 of each, 12 of each, etc. So you could have tons and tons of stuff in the graveyard just from these guys and Monster Nest. You've got Foglets, possibly. You've got Neca Warriors, which have duplicated Foglets, which have gone into the graveyard. Okay, so you could have a megaton of cards in the graveyard. And I've been to Megaton. It's a huge place, okay? So you can have a megaton of cards in the graveyard, and she could easily go up to, what, I don't know, 20, 25, providing all of this kind of works together. In an optimal play, you could get up to 25 strength, which is crazy. Obviously, she's going to have to be one of the last cards you play, and you're going to have to make sure you're not wanting to bring things out again. Obviously, you don't want to refog after you've played the Grave Hag anyway, but, you know, if they're already on the board, then they're not in the graveyard. But you've got all these fire elementals, all the lesser elementals which go in there. Maybe the shadows go in there. The lesser golems go in there. So she can go up super high, which is really going to be interesting. So be aware that the Grave Hag exists and that her ability is really good for Swarm decks. And, you know, everything's just coming together so well for Swarm decks. It's really amazing. The next card that which really utilizes this is the Arrakis Behemoth. 6 strength bronze card goes on the siege row. Whenever a unit absorbs another unit's strength, create and play an Arrakis unit on your side of the battlefield. So this is another way to get extra Arrakis, which again might, if the monster nest only copies the originals, this might count as an original. Not sure, but yeah, it's just more ways to get Arrakis, which you could set to 6, which would go to the graveyard, which the Grave Hag would consume. So you can have 3 of these, which is really, really nice, but you know, so this it's just crazy. I'm going to go onto this card later because it got the consuming ability, and with the other cards we'll go on to those later. We've got the Earth Elemental, which is like another version of the Golem that we saw. It's a silver card, 6 strength, melee. When destroyed, create 2 lesser Earth Elementals. So it's just a bit better than the Golem that we saw earlier. It does the same sort of effect, which could put more stuff in the graveyard, which the Grave Hag can consume, etc. Then next we've got the Griffin, 6 strength bronze card that goes on the siege row. Choose a non-gold unit in your opponent's graveyard and move it to your graveyard. So I haven't seen any medics yet, so there might be a way to get a card out of the graveyard and put it onto the board. Haven't seen any, we'll see if any crop up. But it's definitely going to be powerful for picking out cards which of your opponents which have gone into the graveyard that you don't want them to medic out. So Skellige seems obvious, you know, the Axeman, you're taking him away. There's loads of cards which you could remove and, you know, would really, really hinder your opponents. This is going to be an amazing card, just on that fact, on hindering your opponent's medic ability when you fight in Skellige and Northern Realms, for example. But, again, it will fill up your graveyard more, so you can Grave Hag more units. So you can start to see how she's getting really, really powerful here. And 6 strength is really kind of nice. We've got Leshen, a 7 strength golden, goes on the range row. Create and play an impenetrable fog, which will work really well with those foglets and, you know, things like that we saw earlier. The whole combo around foglets, Neca warriors, maybe the Arrakis, monster nests, and gales, which will hopefully buff them up to 6 even if they're in weather. And create and play 3 rabid wolves. So again, 3 wolves, which hopefully I think about 2 strength each. But again, these are going to be more things which are going to fill up your graveyard, though, that are really going to help the Grave Hag. Caranthir, 8 strength golden, create and play Biting Frost and create and play 2 Wild Hunt Hounds. So again, the hounds will bolster your graveyard. The Biting Frost is nice. We haven't really gone over any cards which will utilize that yet, but I think everyone knows of like Wild Hunt Riders and Wild Hunt Warriors which are immune to Biting Frost. So there's definitely a place for Caranthir and the Biting Frost archetype. Obviously, if you're going for Arrakis and other things which are very ranged orientated, then playing Biting Frost is really, really good just to control your opponent's melee row, which is fine. And next we've got the Ancient Foglet, 4 strength bronze that goes on the range row. So this is going to really utilize the fog as well. Whenever affected by fog, add 2 strength to this unit at the start of your turn. That's really weird terminology there. It kind of indicates that it might stack. So if a fog stays on the board, it would go to 6, and then to 8, and then to 10, but I think that's too strong. I don't know. Whenever affected by fog, that kind of indicates that when a fog is applied. So if you apply a fog, it'll go up to 6, and if you apply another fog, it'll go up to 8 possibly, which make it more balanced because you're wasting fogs. But interesting card. I can't wait to see how that one works out in the end. So we've got the Wyvern, which is a 3 strength bronze card, goes on the range row. Choose a non-gold unit on the opponent's side of the battlefield and remove 4 strength from it. The 4 strength is reasonable. It will remove quite a few of the troublesome silvers that start off low, that go up in strength. The same with a bronze, really, like the what is it called? The Hawker support starts at 2, and every time a special card is played, things like that you want to get rid of early, and this will do the job. There's a couple of other bronze cards which are about 4 strength that have annoying abilities. So good job on this one. It's worth 7 in total. We've got the Frightener, 2 strength silver card, goes on the melee row. Remove all non-gold special cards from your graveyard from the game and add 3 strength to this unit for each. Now, we're nowhere near as good as the Scoia'tael deck involving special cards. Quite a late game thing. It seems like Frightener, Grave Hag, these are all things that you play round 3 to really surprise your opponent, you know. I'm guessing most of them will be special cards, which is fine. You know, Ragnarok is the only golden special card yet. So you could probably feasibly get him up to 12 possibly, I would say, which is reasonable. Things like Skellige Storm and White Frost still only count as 1, unless they actually play the Frost and Fog cards, but I doubt they do. So he's a reasonable card. Seems like he's kind of similar to the Grave Hag, but not as powerful, at least for the monsters. For Skellige, it would probably be a lot better, because they have so many special cards they can draw. This is a powerful card, especially against certain decks. The Ghoul, 4 strength bronze card, goes on the melee row. So 4 strength is reasonably good to start it off, and then its ability, remove a random unit from either graveyard from the game and add its strength to this unit. So seemingly you'd want to play this generally early on, maybe, because then you can predict generally what it's going to pull out. You obviously want it to pull out from your opponent's side. It's going to weaken your Grave Hag if you pull your own stuff out. But it starts on 4, so it's relatively got a nice heads up. If you consume something which is 10 strength, this is going to be 14, which is reasonably good for a bronze, So would work really well against things like Skellige, because they now, I think, buff in original strength with their deck ability. So I can see this being really good against Skellige, and just generally good overall, I think. If you're playing the Grave Hag, you might weaken yourself, but apart from that, it's definitely a good card, because no matter what you eat, it's going to be either a normal bronze card or it's going to be a great bronze card. If you eat something with maybe 1 strength, which means you shouldn't really play the Foglets with this particular card, just in case, unless they're already on the board. Wild Hunt Risers is generally the lowest thing monsters have got, apart from the Foglets, I would say. And that means this is going to be 7 strength, which is, about right for a bronze, 7-8 strength. But you could consume something way better. From the opponent, you could consume something which is 10 strength, 7 strength, which makes this just a good bronze, really, in my opinion. You might want to configure your deck just a little bit to get rid of the Foglets, or play around it by making sure you've got Fog on the board first. And be careful with the Grave Hag and these guys. So we've got the Wild Hunt Warriors, which are 4 strength bronze cards for the melee row. We've seen these go through quite a lot of changes. Choose a non-gold unit on the opponent's side of the battlefield and remove 1 strength from it. If this unit was destroyed, add 2 strength to this unit, and it's immune to Biting Frost. So this is very much a Biting Frost weather heavy deck, but any other weathers will help. Basically, you want to weather them down and then use that 1 strength ping to destroy the card. Okay, so that's basically how they're going to be used. It's a little difficult, but I imagine it wouldn't be too difficult for a monster weather deck. It's definitely for the monster weather deck and not for the swarm deck. So going back to the Arachas Behemoth, we saw its ability is whenever a unit absorbs another unit's strength. So I'm not sure if the Grave Hag falls into that. It doesn't actually absorb the strength of the cards in the graveyard, but the Ghoul would, that we just saw. And there's a couple of other cards which I'm going to go on to now, which would help the Arachas Behemoth from actually activating its ability. The Giant Toad, we've seen this one before. 5 strength silver. Choose a non-gold card in your hand, discard it to the graveyard and add its strength to this one. Then draw a card from your deck. So again, it's filling up your graveyard a little bit, and it helps if you've built a Biting Frost weather deck. If you've got the Fiend in your deck, you could eat it with this and, avoid playing into a bad weather that you've created by yourself. So again, this would activate the Arachas Behemoth, which is a nice synergy there. We've also got the Ekimara, which is a 6 strength bronze. 6 strength is quite nice, actually. Melee row. Choose a non-gold unit on your side of the battlefield, destroy it and add its strength to this unit. So you may want to do it on something which you could probably definitely get back, like the Foglet. May not be really worth it, but again, if you did do it on the Foglet, it would be 8 strength. If the Gales had done it, and so they're all up to 6, then this is going to be worth 12 strength, which is really nice. And you get the Foglet back, but it may not come back at 6, it may come back at about 2. But, at least it comes back, which is better than if you destroy something else. You could chain the Ghoul to eat something, and then chain this onto the Ghoul. But anyway, there's a couple of strategies with this card. And obviously, hopefully you can get this card back. That's why I thought the Foglets might be a good idea, because you are using it again to activate the Arachas Behemoth. and stuff like that. So there's a nice synergy with consuming. We're not seeing much in it yet. There's not too many. There's a couple, about 4 or 5 cards, which can consume things. So next we've got the Water Hag, which is a 4 strength silver card on the Siege row. Create and play Torrential Rain, and is immune to Torrential Rain. So pretty good in a monster weather deck. Gets you a free Torrential Rain, so you might be able to discard one of your Torrential Rain special cards. Only 4 strength, but it's better than just playing a Torrential Rain, probably. But it does take a silver slot. It depends how vital Torrential Rain is for you. We haven't seen many things which are immune to Torrential Rain from monsters. We've got the Drowner, 7 strength Siege. Has no ability though, so would actually get hindered quite a lot from Torrential Rain. So the developers have stated that the Drowner has no ability, but that's just a placeholder. They definitely intend to give it a mechanic, but we probably won't see that in the closed beta. It's probably just going to be like this for the closed beta, which is a shame. So next we've got the Crones, the Brewess, the Weavess, and the Wispess, which are all 6 strength silver cards that go on the Siege row, and they all have the ability to play all other Crones from your deck. So generally all 6 strength susceptible to Scorch. Scorch is not as big a deal as it used to be, so you can just protect them with 1 card and you'll be fine, or possibly bait out the Scorch before you play them. Now the developers did state that they wanted them to be all susceptible to the Thunderbolt potion, which adds +4 strength to all copies of the same card on one particular side of the board, but it won't work on these at the moment because they're not technically the same copies, because you've got the Brewess, the Weavess, and the Wispess. But they want it to work, but it probably won't work in the closed beta. The same thing with the Witches. The Witches, I believe, are all 5 strength though, so these are a little bit higher in strength than the Witches. The Witches do get a 1.5 times benefit from the Thunderbolt, even though the Thunderbolt doesn't actually work on them at the minute. They want it to work on the Witches. So Scorch shouldn't be too difficult to avoid with these guys. We've got quite a lot of high strength units for monsters. Commander's Horns might be really good. If you can bait that Scorch and they're not playing Square Tower, which can easily replay it, then, you know, Commander's Horn these guys and you're away. Wounding's going to have a hard time dealing with 3 12 strength units, I think. But again, they do take 3 silver slots, because you've got the Brewess, the Weavess, and the Wispess, and they're all silver, so you have to spend 3 silver slots, just like the Witches, in order to get these out. You've got the Caretaker, 6 strength golden card, goes on the Siege row as well. Choose a non-gold unit from your opponent's graveyard and play it. So you play it instantly, okay? So we've been told that the operator cannot choose itself when you're doing that weird infinite cycle, so generally quite good. There are some very good cards the opponent could play. You are getting yourself 6 strength as well as whatever is in their graveyard. Against Skellige, the first thing that comes to mind, you know, they could be really, really good. You could get the Axeman and stuff like that, which is just be really good for you. But you got to be careful if you're playing this particular card in with a weather deck, because you got to be careful what you pick out from their opponent's graveyard, and you're kind of restricting yourself if you play a weather deck with this guy. But he is monsters only as well now. We've got the Ice Giant, which is a 7 strength silver card on the melee row. When this unit is affected by frost, add 7 strength to it. Wow, they've buffed that up a bit. So he goes up to 14 now. But I imagine it's not stackable. It used to be stackable, and then it wasn't stackable. So I imagine since they've upped the damage, upped the strength that it gets, then it's not stackable anymore. So 14 strength is pretty good. That'll defend against pretty much a lot of stuff. Okay, so all of your really high strength cards that are 10, 11 strength, this is going to protect them all. So this is going to be very important for that monster weather deck. However, even though Scorches are not as prevalent anymore, so you don't need to protect as much, but I always feel it's necessary to say it. So the card which does get protected by the Ice Giant from Scorch, and really one of the cards that I was referring to, is the Manticore. 10 strength silver card that goes on the Siege row, no ability. So this will protect a lot of cards from Scorch, and the Ice Giant will protect this one. So, you know, Scorch is not as prevalent though. But I think the Crones plus the Manticore, all on the Siege row, a Commander's Horn to finish it off, will get you so much strength that it'll be crazy there. So, you know, that is pretty much 5 special card slots that I've just spoken about though. So you have to be very careful. But yeah, you know, it's decent. So we've also got the Fiend, 8 strength bronze card, goes on the melee row with no ability. So being a bronze means you can have 3 of these. I'm not entirely sure how good it is because, you know, if you're building a monster weather deck, you're most likely going to have a frost. Might be good for the giant toad, which could consume its strength, but I don't think that's a good thing to put in your deck, which is useless apart from for the giant toad. So, and a card which will really help with that sort of archetype of no weathers and trying to keep weathers away is the Archgriffin. Not actually 8 strength bronze with the agile ability, which is unusual. Remove weather effects from the row on your side of the battlefield. So would work really well with either a non-weather deck or a weather deck that you don't want weathers on. Okay, so we know it's not 8 strength because the developers have said that is a mistake, that's too good for the card. And it removes weathers from only your side of the board on the particular lane that you play it on. So it's such a good card, you know. You play it down and then you can maybe decoy it up or whatever, but it removes the weather from the lane it's on, which is really, really, really good. You know, combine that with Clear Skies. This is definitely one of the best cards for getting rid of weather effects, because so far most other decks have just got to suffice with, oh, Clear Skies, you know, and they can be hard to come by. But this is a bronze card, so, you know, if more decks had tech cards like this where you could just remove weather wouldn't be as dangerous as it seems to be nowadays. And this is really going to help. It's not 8 strength, but I don't think that matters. You know, it could be about 4 strength and it's still reasonable, I think, for a non-weather monster deck. Probably the Swarm deck, most likely. We've got the Vran Warrior, 7 strength bronze, goes on the range row, no ability. So we're starting to see the Vran Warrior on range. We've got the Drowner on siege. We've got, what is it, like the Fiend possibly on the melee. So we've got a range of non-ability cards on each row if you just want high strength. You've got Nithral, which is a 7 strength silver card, goes on the melee row. Whenever a Wild Hunt unit appears on your side of the battlefield, remove 1 strength from a random unit on the opponent's side of the battlefield. Immune to frost. So I don't think it can do golds, because this is not gold himself, unless the randomness means it can do gold, if you know what I mean. But it means you can place him down early and then place all your Wild Hunt Riders and your Wild Hunt Warriors and your Caranthea to do the Wild Hunt Hounds and stuff like that. You know, that'll remove strength. It's only a small amount, but would work really well with a monster-focused weather deck, because the 1 strength is enough to remove non-gold units which have been weathered and not buffed afterwards. So, you know, would work really well in that deck. So it's going to be a staple card for that particular deck. So another card which works well with that particular archetype is Draug. 8 strength, golden melee unit card. 8 strength? There's no way that's going to stay at 8 strength. Surely not. Its ability is so crazy. No. Destroy all units on the battlefield with 3 strength or lower. So it can affect your own cards, but it is 3 or lower, and that's so many. If you weather them down, it's just going to completely obliterate them. And you get 8 strength? No, that is just too good. That is just too good. Really. I mean, if that was... I wouldn't be too bad if that had like a timer on it. It feels like that is a perfect card for a timer, like Villain Trettenmer, for example, or something, or that needs to go seriously down in strength. Oh, I don't know. Even if it was just 1 strength or lower, that would seriously hurt for the monster weather deck. Ragnarok plus this guy, suddenly they have to play their Clear Skies instantly. It's such a strong card. I'm amazed that's got so much strength and its ability is so good. Because last time we saw it did golden cards as well. So, my god, you know, ridiculous. And finally, we've got Imlerith, 8 strength golden card, goes on the melee row. Choose any unit on your opponent's side of the battlefield, remove 3 strength from it, and remove 1 strength from all other units on its row. So it can affect golden cards because it's golden itself. And yeah, 3 strength from your target and 1 from everything else. Really good in the monster weather deck. Again, you know, you can target a golden card just to get yourself a little bit less strength, but also remove everything else which is non-gold on that row that has been affected by weather. So monster decks looking to be very, very strong with the weather tech and the Draug tech and stuff. We saw 2 clear archetypes appearing, the monster weather deck and the swarm heavy deck, you know, with Monster Nest and Gale's leader card. But I think there was a room for a little mixture of other things as well. you know, possibly a non-monster weather deck. Most likely going to be Swarm though. But yeah, there's a lot of options here. So I actually am quite scared of monsters now. I'm going to soon be building decks and analysing them for their strengths and weaknesses. How do you beat certain decks? What is the best way to beat certain decks? And I don't mean just like sticking in loads of clear skies, because that's not going to help you when you're fighting other decks. But yeah, they were quite fun for me to do before the big change. So I can't wait to get back onto it. So thanks for watching, everyone. Take care, and I'll see you again very soon.